Yo everybody, what's going on? This is Keegan from Kman Reviews bringing you the next episode of Review Recall. This will cover as many albums that I could listen to that were released in April of this year. I've got a lot to talk about, so I'm just going to skip the preamble entirely. Let's just dive in. Another solid showing from Bebe here, more the typical inoffensive and admittedly shallow pop music, but I did think there were some solid bangers here, and that song with Snoop Dogg was a genuine treat. Not my favorite mainstream pop record this year, but if you're looking for some fun, you won't be disappointed with this one. One of the biggest things I noticed with redveil's recent improvement is the focus on production and quality textures in his music. Plus, just letting out 6 tracks of banger hooks and melodies, really gonna start keeping more focused tabs on him. Not quite the album I was expecting. I was fully going into this expecting some space, ambient house, that sort of scene. But instead there's a lot more EDM upbeat tracks on here. Some tracks straight up sound like reggae cuts. Honestly, a welcome surprise, even if all of it didn't click with me. I think it's still a pretty cool listen. You know, it's overproduced to all fuck and has some ugly moments, particularly in some of the flows, but hearing NF be this optimistic on a record is kind of like a treat as a longtime fan. It feels different. It's distinctly poppier, less dramatic in instrumentation, but I still feel like it has enough unique about it to stand out. So, I'll be standing and defending this record. While it may not be my favorite NF album, I don't think it deserves the slandering it's getting. Honestly, even though it's kind of funny and excessively horny, it's still pretty good. A sequel to the similarly named EP the duo released earlier in the year, and again, I think these two blend together really well. Plus, iForgot really seems to have a bit more confidence behind the mic on this one, so yeah, another home run. I'm not typically huge on drone or ambient or anything in that sort of scene, but there was something in this one. I can't explain to you what it was if I tried since I'm not all that familiar or experienced with the genre, but this was smooth, it went by at a reasonable pace, didn't overstay its welcome. I'm genuinely shocked at how much I like this compared to other drone releases I've heard. I think Sremmurd in general deserves a bit more respect, this album especially. I'm surprised people aren't caring for this as much. There's some decent hits on here, especially on that first half. Some of those tracks could compete with bangers on Sremm Life 1 and 2. The back half makes the album fall a bit flat, but not far enough to where I'd say it's bad. Certainly more salvageable than Sremm 3, so yeah, I liked it a good bit. I get why it's called 72 Seasons, because it sure feels that long. It's better? Not much better, but props for improvement? Xdinary Heroes remain one of the more excitingly experimental and consistent modern K-pop groups. Even though I wasn't crazy about the lead hit from this one, the B-sides were very solid and helped pick this EP up to another enjoyable project from the group. Another warm collection of synthy ambience from khorti. I'd say this one clicks for me a bit more than Neon did, so that's a good positive there. When this album came out, khorti mentioned this was going to be their last album. By the way, that didn't last, but this would have been a decent way to end it regardless. I like this one. Quite the potent, personal collection of tracks to round out this trilogy here, and I'm glad to see that this has reignited debate in Lloyd Banks. While it may not be my personal favorite of the bunch, I absolutely get how it could be, and I'm recommending anyone interested to check this one out. You can probably imagine what this sounds like. It's a pretty typical Tiesto record. I enjoyed it a bit more than average, though considering my love of dance pop, so I'm content with it. Given how much I liked Young Blue's last album, Tantra, this is a severe disappointment. Just a forgettable melodic trap record. Nothing special. Now, this is contention for best pop record this year. Wow, this album is crazy good. Synthwave, new disco, and to think this is only 3 years after the mid-fest that was Brightest Blue. We love comebacks. Pretty good showing from Curren on this one. Glad he recovered well enough from the mid-fest that was spring cleaning too, so, I mean, we take what we can get. I actually kinda like this one. It's a bit more laid back, relaxed, and certainly poppier than a good chunk of what the National have done, but I wouldn't necessarily call that a bad thing. Certainly a slower burn with a heavy carry from the emotive lyrics, but I still found some good melodies here to enjoy. Not my favorite thing the National has done, but I'm not gonna disregard it. Matt Ox taking a break from the Rage EP he released, which I didn't care about, to team up with the Surf Gang Collective for a pretty engaging and mindlessly fun project of trap songs. Wouldn't say it's great at all, but for simple trap like this, it's an alright time. Debut album from this iconic Korean girl group, and a lot of this hits pretty hard. Albums are always a slippery slope in K-pop. A lot of times just feels like the hit single plus a bunch of nothing B-sides. Not all the time, but certainly more often than that, and I think I've here managed to be the exception. I don't think it's all great. It has a few sleepy moments, particularly in the back half, but as a whole, it was a pretty fun listen. I think NLE Choppa is one of the better mainstream rappers still working. I've liked his energy, his charisma, and that's displayed on this way too long latest record of his. Some cringy lines, some boring duds, but all in all, I think it's a decent time. Very beautiful listen here. Silky smooth instrumentals and Ryan's velvety voice makes for a surprisingly intimate record. I would say it stays a bit too comfortable to reach remarkable levels, but it's a rich listen and I think it's worth checking out. I think I like this one more than Skeleton Crew 1, but I'm just not sure if Jules Clay is the best pairing with Skell beats. I found Black Chidori's record with Skell much more appealing, and the That's Not My Skeleton Collective record is probably the best thing Skell's done. I don't know what it is, I still enjoyed it, and I think it has a few riveting moments with unorthodox production, like the song Embalming Fluids. Otherwise, it's kinda just okay. You know, this was cool for like the first couple of tracks, then bombed. If this isn't throwaway project material, I don't know what is. God, this feels lazy. Debut EP from this English post-rock, art rock band, and pretty quickly I get BCNR vibes from this, which is cool because I love that band. Even in the now cluttered scene that is UK post-rock revival, this band manages to stand out a bit more with more post-hardcore editions, and it's kind of like a breath of fresh air. If you're into this scene and you haven't checked this out yet, don't sleep on it. There's a lot to love. Really a who's who of this underground rap scene coming together under producer Skip the Kid's latest record here, and I guess when you're head deep in the scene like I am, there's very little to dislike with something like this. Great album. I'd say it's good, but the rest of the EP gets overshadowed by the two big hits that start it, and don't even reach those heights. Yeah, Swizz is definitely on his element on this little EP, but I don't know how you managed to get such a star-studded feature list with Benny the Butcher, Lil Wayne, Jay Electronica, and Nas, and don't really have any noteworthy verses? I mean, as it is, it's good, but just not a memorable release. I haven't heard much from K-pop girl group Kepler outside of the big singles, however, this EP here was pretty solid. Not the most groundbreaking K-pop project out there, but if you're into the sound, there's no reason you shouldn't be sleeping like this. 3P, more like 3Zs, because as much as I'm a fan of flute in really any capacity, and its inclusion here with old Norse Scandinavian feel is really cool, I just feel like the musical side of the album goes nowhere. Like, some of the instrumentation is dull as hell and doesn't live up to the hype of the band's last album last year. Again, I did still have an okay time with this, but it is a pretty heavy step down. Yeah, it's a solid enough record for Daniel. I prefer his earlier work like Freudian, but honestly the biggest drawback for me are some of these lyrics that just don't fit the vibe of these songs. The sound is still pretty good, so I guess I'd take it. Latest mini-mix collection from Magdalena Bay, and it was a very solid listen. I wouldn't really say anything on here blew me away, but it was very enjoyable in all its 15-minute glory. Okay, this was interesting. There's still a decent chunk of emo rap and cloud rap that's been in Bones' music before, but this time there's some more influences from synth pop and even country, which I was not expecting. And I'm not sure every experiment here works, but I mean, at least it's interesting, and I'm quite fond of interesting. Damn, a textured, lush mini collection of tracks. I wouldn't say it stands out in the year as a whole, but if you're really on the lookout for some singer-songwriter with jazz and some country touches, no reason to sleep on this. You know what, young boy? No, I will not be trying it at home because it's not even that good to begin with. Did you like Once Twice Melody? Do you want more of it? Black Thought has never really been my favorite MC, but he sure is getting closer to that with each project, this one included. This is the debut EP from this subunit of K-pop boy group NCT, and this is one of the finest bodies of work the entire group has done over all of their units. It's smooth, it's funky, it's got an R&B sexiness to it, but immaculate jams as well. I really hope this isn't a one-off project because these three blend together so well, and I hope a follow-up comes at some point in the future. Nah, you can keep it, I'm good. A really fun collection of tracks from the K-pop boy group, really showing their abilities as several different units inside of one big group. Even if I do think some of those shine brighter than others, this was still a good time. As a T Grizzly fan, I'm a bit disappointed with this one. It feels a bit wrong to pin all the blame on Skilla Baby since that's really the only thing that's changed, but that's kind of what I'm going off. T Grizzly really excels with storytelling. That's why I was so in love with Chapters of the Trenches last year. But with this, they kind of just feel like regular mindless trap songs. I know I've praised that in some artists and albums before, but that's not what I listen to T Grizzly for. Thankfully, there are some songs here that follow the formula or are just regular catchy trap bangers, but not what I'm eager to listen to in full again. I've been kind of sleeping on Rustin Kelly. I know he's got quite the following around certain critical spheres, so I decided to finally bite the bullet and give his music a try with this album, and yeah, this was really good. Was not expecting tinges of emo, pop rock, even a little bit of slowcore is present on the track list, all behind Rustin's very raw, vulnerable, and expressive vocals. If you aren't into this yet, give this one a try. It's quite special. Oh boy, this was a disappointment. I don't know what changed here, but man, Unruly was just not it for me on this one. The production was gorgeous, Clowncat did a great job, but I'm genuinely baffled at how uninterested and put off by this one I was. It wasn't necessarily too eclectic or weird or like I didn't get it, it just felt unfinished. Like, I feel like if some of these takes were brushed over a few times or some of the flows were more rigid and properly structured, this could have been a smash. Thankfully, there were a few tracks I connected to well enough, but not the whole thing, and it kinda didn't work for me. I'm not as crazy about NMIXX as I am other K-pop girl groups. I kinda like their general vibe, but they just don't really have that magnetizing presence for me that a group like LE SSERAFIM does. This EP kinda falls into that same general feeling. It's solid though, and I do think there are a few bangers here, but I guess it's not something I'm anticipating a revisit for. Mayhem Lauren with another upbeat collection of bangers. I find his fiery style very entertaining, and especially over Madlib production, yeah, this is bound to be a hit no matter what. You know, I wouldn't necessarily call it groundbreaking, mind-blowing, genre-defining, but the fusion of R&B and glitch pop is pretty cool. I would like a bit more bombast, at least for my liking, but it's a very tight record, and I would recommend it. Now we get to Suga's proper debut album from BTS's solo ventures, and I find it quite great. I love his style of rapping and aggressive hip-hop, and all the cursing on this gives it so much more character. Even if I do think it falls off a bit after People Part 2, this was still a good time, though likely won't leave a lasting impression on outsiders as much as RM's Indigo did. That was good. I would say this album had higher highs and more interesting elements than Greatest Hits did, but I also would say this has some of the most abysmal lows in the band's entire history. I guess that means it's an overall improvement, but man, I'm just not feeling these new Waterparks records. I guess it's one of the better projects affiliated with JR, but it isn't one that wowed me, though I do think it's some of his best performances yet, and A.O. Shamir's production is honestly pretty great, but I think the biggest weight holding this down for me was Fab. I was not feeling his delivery and his energy on the record. I thought he came off a bit dull and disinterested. Still was a good listen, but I guess just not the best thing I've ever heard. Unironically, this shit is great. I was smiling the whole way through. It might be a bit off-putting and kinda memey to outsiders, but there are amazing melodies and surprisingly good vocals below the surface. Give this guy a shot, please. Honestly, it's an all-around good album. Solar 5 is a very competent MC, Custom Made is a solid producer. Fuse them together, and you get a good record. It's basic math. Latest album from this punk rock group from the 70s, I'm not all that familiar with their back catalog, but I was a little bit surprised and equally disappointed to find that a good chunk of this album is just watered down hard rock. I do really like Dave's rich, deeper tone of singing over this, and I'm glad that he knows his range better than a lot of aging singers nowadays, so I think this album has a good few moments worth revisiting, but even with minimal knowledge of the previous material, I'm sticking with that all the way. Yeah, he kinda came back with this one. First of all, I want to clarify right now that I did not listen to this in one excruciatingly long 9-hour session. Absolutely not. But I did break it up into 3 separate listens, and each time I found myself enjoying what I was hearing. A lot of different genre jumping here and some pretty solid ideas all around, though I cannot recommend this in good faith to anyone outside of Mac's core fanbase and diehards. Yeah, strictly for the fans is right because there isn't much here that's going to make anyone a new fan. Alrighty folks, and that is going to do it for this episode of Review Recall. Thank you all so much for watching, I really hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And go follow me on all my social medias, the links will be down in the description. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.